Welcome to the Healthy Relationships Initiative podcast. Our goal is to provide information and tools to help you build happier, healthier, and safer relationships of all kinds. To learn more about HRI, please visit www.guilfordhri.org and check us out on social media at GuilfordHRI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Relationship Booster. We're glad to have you with us today. Today's program is on healthy dating relationships. Before we begin, I'm going to share a little bit about the Healthy Relationships Initiative for those of you who may not be familiar. The Healthy Relationships Initiative is a partnership between UNC Greensboro and the Phillips Foundation. And our mission is to promote happy, healthy, and safe relationships of all kinds in Guilford County and beyond. And we invite you to check out our website at www.guilfordhri.org to learn more about the initiative and connect with some of our other resources, as well as connect with us on social media at GuilfordHRI. Just a few housekeeping points before we get started. First of all, we do have the chat feature available, and so we do recommend that you use an anonymous name if you want to. Actually, the other participants can't see the list of who's on here, but just as that added level of confidentiality, you're welcome to do that. We do invite you to use the chat room because we want to take your questions as we go throughout the program today. So if you have a question that you would like for Robin and myself to address throughout the program, just submit that to Camila Dos Santos throughout the program, and we will have time for taking questions later in the program. And especially before you sign off at the end of the program today, please be sure to complete the feedback form, which will be posted in the chat room, because we want to get your feedback so we can continue to improve these programs. Today's program is about healthy dating relationships, and it'll feature myself and Robin Campbell, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in just a moment. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I'm the director of the Healthy Relationships Initiative, and I'm also a professor in the Department of Counseling and Educational Development, and I coordinate the couple and family counseling track. Our featured expert today is Robin Campbell, and she is the director of the Counseling Center at Bennett College here in Greensboro. And Robin, if you could just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and especially why you were interested in talking with us about this topic.
Well, like Christine said, my name is Robin Campbell, and I am presently at Bennett College Counseling Center. And a little bit about me, I've been in counseling for a very long time. Started out in behavioral health at High Point Regional Hospital. I've been in a college setting now for probably about 15 years. Also have done some counseling work in the ministry at my church, and really enjoy counseling and just helping others. And this topic interested me because on a college campus, we deal with a lot of relationship-related issues. So I was very drawn to this topic.
Great. Well, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of wisdom to share, especially not only with your work with college students, but also all of the other experiences that you've had that you mentioned. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in and start talking about dating relationships. And again, at any time, you're welcome to submit questions that we can cover. So we're going to start really broad as just sort of looking at what would a healthy dating relationship look like. So within the Healthy Relationships Initiative, we worked hard with a lot of our community partners to really look at defining a healthy relationship across the board. So I'm just going to read through our definition. Okay. And so we define a healthy relationship as one that's built on respect, trust, safety, acceptance, freedom of choice, positive communication, managing conflict, and having fun. And we always want to make sure that people know that healthy doesn't mean perfect. So a relationship can be healthy, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And we know that in any relationship there will be conflicts and challenges that might arise. So that's our general way that we look at healthy relationships within our initiative. But let's think about what this means in a dating relationship, because a dating relationship is a special and different kind of relationship. So how do you think, well, how would you define a healthy dating relationship?
When I think about healthy dating, I think about collecting data. That's a good way to look at it. Just collecting data about the person, observing their behaviors, observing their interactions. A lot of times actions speak louder than words. being clear about what your expectations is in a relationship. Some of the things that you mentioned earlier about having a common interest, respect, communication, all of those things are a healthy dating relationship. And I think, like working with students especially, and I think this can go across the board, making a foundation. Because when you have a good foundation of friendship, you can build upon those more serious areas of relationships and intimacy and things like that. So establishing a good foundation, friendship, before moving to those other levels of dating.
So that does sound like something that's really unique about dating relationships, because both maybe you are collecting data in other types of relationships, but it really speaks to the importance of a healthy dating relationship is one where you're learning about that person and trying to decide what the best possible sort of maybe outcome for that relationship is for you. And so while respect and some of the characteristics that we mentioned are always going to be common, and we want those in all of our relationships, certain things like maybe trust, for example, safety, those are things that you can have right away with somebody.
Exactly. And trust is something that you have to build. I think a lot of times people rush into serious relationships without even building that trust. Trust is something that you have to earn. You know, are you trustworthy?
And that seems like it speaks to the importance of a healthy dating relationship, really maybe starting looking at that friendship piece first before and seeing if you can build that foundation there. Exactly,
because when you think about a building, if the foundation is shaky, then the building is not going to stand tall or be secure. So, and what I find a lot of times is people just kind of rush into giving so much of themselves, especially in an intimate way these days, without really having a foundation. Like I asked one of my students, like, what's his favorite food? What's his favorite color? What kind of food does he like? You know, and they really don't know a lot about the person before giving so much of themselves.
So healthy dating relationships really take time to develop. It sounds like it's not necessarily immediate connection and then jumping right into something, because it's important to build that foundation and then also that data collection piece too. I love the way that you said that. I've never thought of it that way before, but that is a really kind of relevant and useful way to think about it. Of course, should you let the other person know you're collecting data?
Probably not. No, probably not. But you know, just looking at the different behaviors, whether it's the kind of company they keep, the kind of things that they do, and not really compromising what your expectations are. So you're really kind of just analyzing, is this something that is going to work for me? And
so it's really balancing that. Of course, you're not going to have a checklist.
Exactly, it'd be like, exactly.
Kind of data in the more research standpoint, but it is, you know, kind of being clear. I guess what you're mentioning makes me think that you need to have that clear idea of what's important to you, what your values are, what you're looking for in that person, and then the data is sort of how does it match up
with me. Exactly. Exactly.
That's great. Well, I hope we can talk some more about the key dating points or data points that people should be looking at. So, but let's go ahead and kind of talk about dating is obviously something that is very bound in culture and generational timing, and so let's talk a little bit about what healthy dating looks like specifically in today's world. Obviously, dating today is different than it was 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, possibly. So what do you see as sort of some of the unique aspects of dating today in today's world?
I would have to say social media. People are meeting people through social media, whether it be Facebook or your Match.coms, Instagram, and things like that. So something that has changed now is people don't have a lot of interaction in the beginning stages of dating. And you're really getting to know someone behind a keyboard. And not just with the social media sites, but even with your cell phone and the texting. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that, about some relationships are built through a lot of texting and not a lot of conversation.
Even if somebody meets in the real world and doesn't meet virtually online or through a dating site, that still relationships in the early stages today are often built in that sort of online virtual platform.
Exactly.
Which I guess has some
advantages
some
and
advantages
disadvantages.
and some positive aspects to it, and then it also can present some challenges too.
Yes, exactly. And I think with us being in the counseling profession, we know that we communicate a lot in nonverbal communications. So gone is the day of meeting people and sitting down and interacting in those beginning stages to really see what the nonverbals are saying too. You know, because anybody can hide behind a keyboard and type, right? So I think that's something that has significantly changed.
And you also mentioned that it's people are sort of meeting in the dating context without having a lot of back history. So maybe in the past, or if you meet someone in a more natural way, like starting in a friendship and then it grows into a relationship, that is something that maybe you know their friends or you know other people, so you going back to the data, you have more maybe data points, and so now it seems like kind of what you're saying is that people, you don't have a lot of history, and then all of a sudden you're dating somebody.
Exactly, and it's good to have a point of reference. I mean, it's great to meet someone through someone else. So if they are, you know, have some issues, you know, you can kind of have a point of reference if someone introduces you and they're a mutual friend. But some other points that, you know, we have to think about, that online now is the mainstream. So, and it's not looked down upon like it was maybe 15 or 20 years ago. You have people that are meeting and getting married. And so if you're kind of old-fashioned, kind of like I am, of just meeting people the old way or whatever, you're going to probably have to step out your little comfort zone and maybe think about the online piece of meeting people. Some things also is that nowadays relationships aren't necessarily monogamous until you verbally say that it is, just from my observation. And then once a person mutually agrees, hey, we're monogamous. But you see now people date multiple people, and it's kind of like a understood. But until you verbally say, hey, are we monogamous? I mean, these are the things that you have to do. Be clear about what you are so you won't be misled.
Right, and that can lead to a lot of unclear expectations that people might bring into a dating relationship if they're assuming we're monogamous, I'm the only one, and then it turns out, like you said, I think in many cases, for a lot of people, the norm is that they would be dating a lot of people until they have that explicit conversation that they're not, and that can be difficult if people are coming in with different expectations. Exactly.
And some other things too is that people, a person may not pick you up for that first date, like it was maybe 10 years ago. Your first date may be meeting someone at a restaurant or a bar or a social event. So those first few dates may be meeting out just for safety reasons nowadays, that, you know, especially women, we want to be safe, because you do hear of some not so good stories that happen from meeting online. But just really making sure too that you practice safety. If you do online dating, maybe tell a friend, hey, I'm going out and this is the person's name, you know, just until you get to know the person a little bit better, because you don't have a point of reference.
Right, so you need to be more conscious of the safety issues possibly, especially if you're meeting in that online format. And like you said, I do think it's important that we point out to people that people who meet online, that can be a very healthy thing for people. So it's not necessarily even how people meet, whether the relationship is healthy or not. In fact, I saw a study in the news the other day about how just as many couples who meet online get married than couples who meet in other more traditional ways.
Right.
So that has changed. So it's not that, it's just maybe it really changes the way those relationships start and what they look like.
It does. And today it's okay to Google people.
That's right.
It's okay to Google people, and it's not, you know, looked upon badly. And with social media again, my students tell me that Facebook is for older people, but they kind of do the Twitter and the Instagram thing. But really kind of looking the person up, because you can tell a lot about a person through their profile.
So it's okay to do that.
Yeah,
so
it's okay.
Do a little bit of research. And I guess in a way it's probably very similar to if you met someone through a friend in the past and you would talk to that friend to get to know about them, and then this is a new way that you can kind of check out a person potentially that you're dating. That's really interesting. Do we have a question that's related to this topic? All right, go ahead.
We have a question related to the use of social media. What are some healthy boundaries you think couples should have around the use of and sharing on social media?
Great question.
Yeah.
I think that you should just kind of tread lightly. And I know you may be excited about your new bae, is what my student says, not boo anymore, but it's bae, to get that out on social media. But I think you should really, really wait, again, until that foundation is established before you go sharing. Because sometimes people share a little early in the relationship and it doesn't work out. And then they have to deal with the kind of the aftermath of, you know, we broke up.
Yeah.
So I would say tread lightly and just kind of, you know, talk with your partner too. Some people are private and they don't want all their business on social media, but the younger generation posts everything. And so I would say just really think tread lightly until you know that you're secure in that relationship.
Because it seems like that would add an added level of pressure almost to keep a relationship, especially as we're collecting the data and we're looking at kind of all the information that we're getting. Then you might find something else, and then if you've already gone public with that relationship, then you know you might find yourself in a relationship where you maybe it's not a healthy relationship, but it's harder to get out of it because you've already shared things about it with everybody. So it definitely seems like having some good boundaries around when to share that. That's a great point too about making sure that the partners are talking and maybe not posting a picture or anything about the partner or a dating partner until they've talked about it, and make sure that that's okay with the other person.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Definitely relevant in today's world.
Yes.
So what do you think, are there any other sort of common challenges that you can think of in the current age of dating and what that looks like?
It's okay, like I said, to Google the person. Any other challenges? Let me think. Not really. I think that kind of covers it, you know, from a holistic
that covers
standpoint.
a lot of the points. So let's talk a little bit about unhealthy relationships. We talked about healthy relationships and what that looks like, and what does healthy dating look like in today's world. But let's think a little bit about unhealthy dating relationships, because that's part of that data collection process, and just learning about somebody and making sure that the foundation is going to be able to be built. So sometimes people use the term red flags to look for a potentially unhealthy or even a potentially abusive relationship. So what would you say are some important red flags for people to look for in dating relationships?
If the person is very controlling, I think that whole power and control component that we talk about with domestic violence and things like that a lot of times people think that violence in relationship is only the physical, but the mental and the emotional are red flags that we need to think about. So even in your conversations, if the person is always asking you, where are you, and texting you multiple times. I mean, some texts are fine, but if it gets a little bit obsessive, that's a red flag. Also, if they try to keep you away from family and friends and don't want you to do the things that you used to do, I think the key is to think about is balance. Respect is very, very important. So if you're feeling disrespected in the relationship, that's a red flag. You know, name calling or minimizing you or your feelings. When you think about dating, you think it takes two. It's a partnership. So really, really thinking about, is my voice being heard in this relationship? So I think those are some things to think about.
And this is one thing that I think does get really tricky. One of the things that I will say a lot in the context of domestic violence work is that healthy relationships often start, and they typically look pretty much the same as unhealthy or unsafe relationships. And so even sometimes people who can be controlling or abusive, sometimes in the beginning that comes across as they're interested and flattering. And so it seems like it would go back to kind of that need to take things slowly, because it's hard in the beginning to decipher some of those signs. Like, somebody doesn't usually come out on a first date and belittle you or, you know, tell you not to hang out with their friends. Most people, you know, probably wouldn't ever go on a second date with somebody if they did that. But really, that can be something. So really, it seems like looking at the red flags over the course of, looking for potential red flags over the course of time.
Exactly, because usually what a person that is abusive, they're going to be rainbows and sunshine in the beginning. Everything is going to be just like absolutely great. And then after they gain that trust, that's when they kind of you'll start to see some of those behaviors. I like to think about it as the unmasking. You know, it takes about, 3 to 6 months for people's real colors to show. So in those first few couple of months, everything can be perfect. But really, really think about, about that 6-month period, that real person is going to come out.
So everybody wears a mask.
Exactly.
As we go about our days, but then especially in the context of dating, for people to really be aware of, understand that this person's wearing a mask. There could be something under the mask that is just like everybody has a few issues.
Yeah, we all have things we need to work on, right?
Or it could be when that mask comes off, we're seeing really unhealthy behaviors or abusive relationships or abusive behaviors. So again, really that taking the time, building that foundation of friendship. And it looks like we have another question related to this topic. So go ahead, Camilla.
Yes, this question has to do with unhealthy dating relationships. How can a parent best handle a situation when they know that their teen is in an unhealthy, psychologically abusive relationship? I have a family member who is in high school, and she does not want to listen to her mom when she warns her about her relationship being unhealthy.
I would have to say really, really seek out resources because, teenagers don't want to listen to their moms the majority of the time. They think they know it all. But maybe just really encourage your child to maybe seek counseling, or either you as a parent initiate that, just to have them to go talk to a counselor about what a healthy relation looks like. So I would say try to use resources within the community, within the school, or if you have a close family member or friend that, your kid is a little bit closer to, that they may listen to, that may help. Because, teenagers can be peculiar sometimes, right?
Right, and they're often more likely to listen to their friends.
Exactly.
Or maybe even another adult, like a coach or somebody. So,
a coach or a younger cousin or older brother or sister to kind of say, hey, have you thought about this? So maybe approaching it in that way, by pulling someone else in that you think your child would listen to.
And I think sometimes, because some teenagers do have a tendency to maybe rebel against what their parents are saying, in that case, as a parent, you may not want to come down so hard on the relationship, like, you have to get out of this relationship, or really come in a forceful way, because what you might end up doing is actually driving
them
that teenager more into the relationship. So it's more about probably meeting them with support, again, knowing what the resources are in the community. And I love what you said about, even if you can't get that teenager to go in for counseling, or maybe to recognize for that parent to seek that help. And certainly if there are real concerns about safety issues, to reach out for that help and get some guidance, some professional guidance on how to handle that situation and keep the teen safe.
Yes,
yeah.
Safety is important.
So that was a really great question.
Good question.
So we can come back to talking a little bit more about that topic later, but for now let's get into some practical tips around dating. And we'll start to kind of break this down into some different phases. Obviously, what dating looks like can be very different for people. Some people say they're dating if they're in a pretty committed relationship, or if they're starting to see somebody. But let's go back up before even any of that. So let's say you have someone totally single, but they're interested in starting to think about dating. So what can somebody do before they even put themselves out there to start dating, or start looking for somebody to date, or starting to open that door? What can someone do during their season of being single to prepare for dating?
Take an inventory of yourself. I think a lot of times we focus on, I want this in this person. We have our little list and checking it off about what this person should be. But what is your expectation? What are you bringing to the table? We're really good about talking about what we want in someone else, but how are we showing up in the relationship, I think, is really important. Taking an inventory of yourself and really knowing what your expectations are. Your expectations may be a little bit different from the person that you're beginning to date, and being able to verbalize, this is what my expectation is, or this is what I desire. Do I want to just kind of casually date, or am I looking for a monogamous relationship? Really knowing what you want and being able to communicate that early on. May not have to do it on the first date, but after you establish that friendship, to really take inventory of yourself and know what your expectations is and what you want.
Yeah, I've heard it said it's kind of more about becoming the right person than it is focusing on finding the right person. But really looking at yourself during that time to kind of prepare yourself. And I think you're right on target with what you said about for people to really be clear what they're looking for, and be able to kind of be prepared to communicate that to the other person. And of course, if you were to meet somebody that you really like, then you might be able to be flexible on certain things. But obviously, if people are heading down two different paths, one person really just wants to casually date around, the other person's really looking for a serious, committed relationship. If they don't address that in the beginning, that seems like that could be a real problem.
Exactly.
And so the more clear someone is before they go into that process,
the better.
The better it'll be for them. So now let's assume our friend here, our imaginary friend who's kind of thinking about dating. Let's say they're out there, ready to get out there, and let's say they've started to meet somebody or they started to get out there. So what should people do in the early stages of dating to really start that off in a healthy way?
In the early stages of dating, really, really knowing what your deal breakers are.
Okay, say more about that.
And when I say deal breakers, if you know that you cannot be with anyone that smokes cigarettes, then you need to say that. If you admire someone that's close with family, because family may be important to you, but your new partner does not get along with their family, doesn't like their mother, that's kind of one of those red flags that you can kind of really know early on, and just be real about, like you said earlier, are we looking for the same things? Are you a Netflix and chill kind of person? Or are you a person that is really looking for monogamy and commitment? And being able to not say, well, I can change him or her, and kind of settling and getting yourself kind of emotionally attached, being able to recognize that. And something else that I think is really important is not comparing yourself to other people in relationships. I mean, you may use their relationship as a marker if it's positive, but what may work for their relationship may not work for yours. So really, really knowing what it is that you stand for and what your expectation is. And something else, too, I think is important when starting to thinking about dating, leaving the past behind. Sometimes people bring their luggage into the relationship, and it ruins it before the relationship even gets started. So if you have some issues about you still are in love with that person and you hadn't fully let go, you may need to take some time to work through that before you start a new relationship.
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to that, almost that pre-dating phase, we could call it, about what to do to be ready. And so it seems like it's really important for somebody to heal what's happened in the past before you start thinking about putting yourself out there for a dating relationship. But definitely early on, it sounds more like being really clear of what you want. But I think the key is also really being honest about that with the other person. Early on, I'm sure it's tempting for a lot of people to really try to look for oh wow, this is in common between us, and try to build that connection around some commonalities where you might have a tendency to ignore some of those differences. And it sounds like what you're saying is to pay attention to some of those and be honest about it. So if somebody likes to go out to a Mexican restaurant and somebody doesn't, just be honest about what your preference
like I can't stand Mexican, Can we choose something else?
2 years down the line, always going out to the Mexican restaurant, and you're like, I don't even like Mexican food. How did I get into this?
Exactly.
But and that's kind of a silly example, but there's obviously the parallel with maybe even more serious issues or more significant, like maybe religious differences.
I was going to say that, religious differences, and that can be, one of those deal breakers if your religion is very important to you.
Right. So being clear about that, being honest about that. So as couples move from kind of the early stages, getting to know each other, and then let's say they do decide to make that commitment, but it's still a dating relationship, maybe they're not engaged or, taking on any real higher level of commitment, but they're sort of agreeing that they're going to be monogamous, but they're still dating. So what do you think are some good practical tips for couples at that stage of the dating process?
Continuing to build. Continue to build and to get to know each other, especially in those first few months of dating, and trying to build upon doing activities and things that you can engage and get to know each other better. So I think it's just a building process to continue to build. And even, too, when it gets more serious, really being able to meet the family. Because a lot of times when you meet the family, you can kind of see it's good to know who you're dating.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really kind of taking more steps and realizing that you're still getting to know that person.
Exactly.
You might have a basic foundation that you've started to build, but let's think about how people can kind of take more steps to build on that foundation. So it might be meeting the family, it might be talking through some deeper level issues, but it sounds like what you're saying is it's also really important to know that you're still getting to know that person, even if you've made that commitment, and it's still important to keep an open mind.
And keep building, and keep building.
So let's talk, it looks like we have actually a question about long distance relationships, so let's hear that.
Yes, actually we've had a few questions about long distance
relationships.
So long distance relationships are more common than ever with the advent of long distance communication. What are some tips regarding long distance dating, and then especially as it pertains to when a partner is not available or when there are a lot of misunderstandings?
I think the communication has to be even more clear in long distance. If you all decided to be long distance, really establishing how often are we going to see each other. If they're in Charlotte, okay, we're going to see each other twice a month. You know, maybe you come down here one weekend and I come down there one weekend. If it's a little bit more long distance, how long are we going to be long distance? Are we going to be long distance forever, or is this long distance with the intention of longevity, of becoming engaged and becoming married? Again, asking those pertinent questions, because there are some commuter marriages, you know, out there and things like that, but usually those kinds of relationships start together at first. You get what I'm saying? So it's really, really good to communicate, hey, we're long distance. What does this mean for us? How long are we going to be long distance? And are we going to take this to another level? And really being clear, like you were saying about the communication, whether it's, at least now we have FaceTime, so that's a good thing. You know, maybe if you can't see each other as often, maybe doing the FaceTiming a little bit more often, and maybe having more conversations than text message conversations, because you want to still feel close to that person while you're building.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of opportunities too to build on that communication and all the different ways that you can communicate with somebody else when it is a long distance relationship. It seems like it's also important for couples to think about how they're spending the time when they are together, because like you said, it might be limited. It might only be a couple times a month. So maybe you don't want to go to a movie when you're spending that time together, because the movie you're not going to be talking during the movie. So really finding things that you can do together during that time to get to collect more data potentially, or you know, get to know that person in a different way. So you might want to really think carefully about how you're spending that time together. And also, I totally agree with you about really being clear on what are the expectations, what does this look like, and then also what is the impact of that long distance aspect, and just understanding the relationship may not move quite as quickly as if you were living in the same town, but also still a lot of the things that we've talked about any relationship are always going to be true, taking that time to get to know the person, being clear, being open. I think in some ways long-distance couples, because they have to be so intentional about their communication, if they can make it through that, it does tend to build a strong relationship.
It says a lot, and then I think the trust factor is so important in the long-distance relationship, even more so, because you really have to trust your partner because you're not there.
Right.
Yeah,
so really building that trust. And then also on the other side of that, making sure you yourself are being as trustworthy as possible and doing all you can to do that, because that's the best way to create that safety in the context
it works both ways.
Relationship. Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about a little bit of a difficult topic right now. So as everybody knows, sometimes dating relationships don't work out, and one part of the dating process that for a lot of people is a very unpleasant aspect of the dating process, is when relationships end and there's a breakup. So is there such a thing as a healthy breakup? And if so, what does that look like?
There is. It is a such thing as a healthy breakup. It's kind of like the grief process. You know, when the person does break up, really being able to mourn the loss. And to really say, okay, this did not work out for me. Let's look at why. You know, kind of really taking that introspective look, and then looking at the other person too, because like I say, it always takes two to tango. One person is not always 100% right in the relationship. Really getting through the denial, like if you've been the person that has been let go of, you know, not feeling so bad about yourself, but really taking some of the things that you have learned from this relationship. That's what I like to tell a lot of people that I talk with about. What are some things that I learned about me in this relationship, and what are some things that I will do differently in the next relationship? So let it be a learning lesson for you. And you may be angry, you know, and you may be bargaining like, well, maybe this is just a little while. I've spoke with someone that, you know, have you ever seen people that just break up so frequently and get back together? That gets to be
with the same person.
With the same person, and it gets to be kind of draining. That's not healthy, you know, if you break up with each other, you know, every 2 weeks. So really looking at the healthy breakup and really taking time to work on you and think about what it is that you can do better, and what did I learn from this relationship as I look to building another relationship that is healthy.
So it sounds like accepting it, and you know,
right.
kind of working on coming to terms with it, processing a lot of the emotions. Like you said, it can be it's a grief process for people. It's a loss, especially if it was a long-term relationship, that person was important to them. But then also just taking that time, you used the word earlier, that inventory, like what can I learn about this relationship, and what do I want to do differently? Maybe what are some things I want to look for, and what are some different things I might be looking for in a partner, so that, because I think there are a lot of people, when they don't take that stock, they find themselves making the same mistakes over and over again. And that really speaks to what you had said earlier about healing the past before you're moving into a dating relationship.
And dating the same person. You've seen those patterns where even though you may have broke up with Joe over here, you know, Tom over here is the same as Joe was. So you know, really looking at that, but also too with the healthy breakup of really just taking time to take care of yourself. You know, do that healing, do that inventory, exercising, eating better, going out with friends, and maybe once you're ready, having your friends to say, hey guys, I broke up and I'm looking for someone new. If you happen to know someone, you know, kind of connect us. Maybe you can do the group dating thing where it won't be so much pressure. But really taking time, giving yourself time to heal, and really be open to meeting new people once that healing process takes place.
Yeah, and it seems like you mentioned the breakup for the person who is broken up with, and that obviously might be harder to come to terms with or to accept, but I would think the same is true for the person who
has to do the
one who
initiated,
and it might be mutual, but even if it's something that you wanted, it's probably not the healthiest thing to then turn right back around and go right back on. It's not. It's good to still take that time. There's still
take that time to heal before you get back out there again, because again, you don't want to bring that luggage into the new relationship and then do blaming, you know, about, well, my last boyfriend did this or did that. So I really believe in taking the time of healing, because some people don't even give themselves time to heal, and they're just hopping from relationship to relationship, and that's not healthy.
Yeah. Is there a set timeline that you recommend? From one breakup before a person starts dating again?
I think it's according to the person and according to how long the relationship was and how serious it was. You know, if it was an online thing where you guys would just kind of together for 3 weeks, you know, then of course it probably wouldn't take as much time. But I really think it depends on how long the relationship was, how serious it was, and how involved you were in it. Because sometimes people can be more into the relationship, then the other partner or the expectation isn't the same. You know, like I wanted monogamy, but here you are kind of dating multiple people, but did you ever communicate that?
Right.
So really, really looking at that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's not necessarily a set timeline,
right.
But I do think it might be good for people to give themselves some sort of minimum, you know, like a period of time where they're just going to take a break from dating, give themselves time to heal, and they might need more time, they might need a little less time, but yeah, sometimes you'll hear kind of rules about that, but I think that it's more really about the person and what they need, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of different aspects of the relationship that can play into that. Do we have a question?
We do. We have a couple.
Great.
What about when a long-term relationship ends? What's the best way to deal with family members who might be invested in the relationship and who might have some opinions?
Been there, done that. Wow. Just really sitting down with the family members, because, you know, if they really like the person and they're like, what happened? You know, we really, really liked him, but just getting the family to respect, you know, that you guys are no longer together, and that this is something that you both decided, and to really just have that conversation, because sometimes family can be pretty strong in their opinions.
Yeah, one way or another. They might really like
Exactly.
the person, they may not like the person, and then either way that sort of can become really complicated. But like you said earlier, introducing someone to the family, getting to know, that's an important step in a dating relationship. And so when the breakup happens, it's not just the breakup between the partners, it's also the breakup with possibly family, might also be friends too. Family was only mentioned, not friends, but you may have connected with someone's friends, and you know, I think it is important for people to have really good communication with the family, even the friends. What does that look like moving forward in today's world, thinking about even social media? Are you going to stay connected with them on Facebook or Instagram, or those ties, you know, sort of cut off? And a lot of that, I think, does play out in terms of kind of who initiates the breakup, how ugly is the breakup, how difficult is it. But I do think it's important for people to communicate. If their family is still in touch with somebody that they've broken up with, then that might be difficult for them, and that can add to some of the challenges.
It can, and just to respect your, you know, your decision. Hey, Mom, I respect your feelings, and I know you liked him, but it wasn't working for me, and I'm gonna need you to, you know, kind of support me on this, and you know, because I'm going through this too, so I need your support. I would appreciate your support, is how you say it.
Yeah, asking for that support. And I guess in some cases, if they're not getting the support from their family or their friends, then they may need to take a little step back from that relationship and connect more and lean more on people who are going to support them.
Yeah, like a professional counselor or something, if they needed to do that.
Yeah.
Can you address the problems that college students face when a dating relationship ends?
Just being supportive, going to their college counseling center. It's free. It's already in your tuition, so you should use it. I know sometimes people are really hesitant about counseling services because of the stigma that is attached with it, but really taking advantage of the resources on your campus so that counselor can really create a treatment plan that works best for you and to help support you through that process. I think that would be good, just to really utilize the services that you have on campus and not really going, your friends can be somewhat of a support, but sometimes it's good just to get that professional guidance. What do you think, Christine?
Yeah, I think those are great points about reaching out for support, and that college students may have different types of support more readily available to them. I think a challenge for a lot of college students, if they're breaking up with somebody, college students might have more time on their hands than people who are maybe older and in their careers. So they might be spending a lot more time together. There might be more opportunities to see each other on campus. Maybe they ate lunch together every day or something like that. So they might be a little bit more in each other's daily routines. So it seems like it would be important for a person to really think through, okay, should I find a friend? If I was always eating lunch with my partner and now we're broken up, should I find somebody else to connect with? So really kind of thinking through how to maybe build some more boundaries around the relationship. You may have to prepare for things like if you have a class with that person, or if you have a friend group that's kind of in common with that person, and how to navigate those relationships. So I definitely would go back to what you said about the possible value of reaching out to a counselor or maybe a mature and supportive friend who can help you think through some of those.
Or getting involved in some other kind of activities on campus. There are a lot of student activities and clubs and organizations or hobbies or volunteer work. You know, a lot of times when people are going through those tough times, it's good to maybe do some community service to kind of take your mind off of it and help others.
Yeah.
So I think that would be good too.
Yeah, I think for college students or really anybody, I think that there is that period of sort of healthy grieving, processing the emotions, which might mean you want to sit at home and eat ice cream and watch TV shows or something like that. But if we're doing that after a period of time, that you need to start kind of reconnecting with the world in different ways. And so like you said, getting out there and doing some volunteering, connecting with a group or a hobby or making some new friends is really an important step. And especially if somebody's having a hard time doing that, it would be really important for them to reach out for that extra help.
Yeah, and exercising too. I mean, because we know that helps mood, so you don't want to seep into a depression. So maybe even, you know, incorporating exercising in your daily regimen and going to the gym and just working out, you know, so that could help too.
Yeah. We have other questions?
Well, we do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not necessarily related to this topic.
Okay.
But, with technology becoming more prevalent and prominent, it seems like it can impede face-to-face time and intimacy between partners. Can you speak to this and maybe give some tips on how to set boundaries with technology?
Again, communicating with your partner. Hey, hon, it seems like you're constantly on your phone. Can we kind of have some blackout times where we just put the phone down? You've seen people in restaurants that are out together and they're both engaged on their phone. I think that's, you know, I don't think that's a good thing, especially if one person is texting and the other person is sitting there. So maybe really having a communication of saying, hey, I see that we spend a lot of time on our phones, on our iPads, on our, you know, computers or what have you. Can we just have some blackout times from the technology to be with each other? I think that's what I would do, or that would be a good suggestion.
Yeah, it's definitely an important area for couples to be able to talk about with each other, for them to ask what they might need. Like one person may not need as much technology-free time in the relationship, and the other person might. I do think for some people, if they have a job, maybe they're on call, or if they have a child and maybe they need to have it. So to be open about if you do need to stay a little bit more closely connected to the technology, but definitely technology can be something that can help people connect, especially when they're not together, but it also can be a big distraction. And so I think that the idea that the person who wrote that question of kind of implementing some tech-free time in that relationship is a really,
it's really important.
It's very important today.
And it's important too, I think, in relationships to really use I statements. That way you're not, when you say you do this and you do that, that puts people on the defensive. But maybe saying I feel that you spend a lot of time on technology and on your, you know, devices when we're together. And if you kind of take ownership of that, it doesn't put the other person on the defense. So just really talking about it.
Yeah, like maybe instead of saying like you're on your technology too much or you don't care about me, to say, you know, I would really feel more connected if we could put our phones aside and have some time together without it. So let's talk, obviously we've been sort of talking about challenges and breakups, and so that's kind of the dark side of dating that comes along with the process. But as we're coming to our last several minutes of the program, let's kind of move more into a more positive note. So dating can be a very difficult process for people. It can be gut-wrenching for people as they kind of deal with trying to understand the person, trying to find the right person, maybe rejection along the way, breakups, things like that. But let's think more positively. Like, what is the hope or the positive aspect of dating, and just some words of encouragement that we can offer to people?
Well, I like to kind of just think about the quote, as a man thinketh, so is he. So really, really thinking about how am I showing up? how am I making myself presentable? Because a lot of times we can have that look on our face like, don't talk to me, you know how we can be sometimes, but really trying to make yourself just open and available. Because I think if you say, I'm open and available, that energy is going to be drawn back to you. So just saying, you know, doing the work, doing the healing, but say, hey, you know what, I'm at a place now where I'm really open and available to attract the person of my dreams. So how am I showing up? How am I presenting? And really not just sitting home on the couch, but really trying to connect with other people, because I think it's always good to let people know that, hey, I'm out there dating again, you know, put a good word in me, or go out and try to engage in activities where you can meet people. And everybody that you meet does not have to be your husband or wife, but just creating that energy of friendship and then seeing if things build from there. Because I always say, dating someone that you're a friend with is the greatest thing, because romance and intimacy is a good thing in relationships, but it's even better when you have that friendship, because you actually like each other and can do things together. So I think the friendship thing, I think, is just really a good thing to think about.
And I think, too, it's also not just focusing on the relationship with the other person or the other people you might be dating, but it's also a really great opportunity to work on your relationship with yourself as you're going through all of that. And really, you know, one of the things I was sort of thinking about earlier is to try and enjoy the process and not get so focused on what the outcome is. Of course, everybody who's interested in dating is probably interested, at least on some level, in meeting that person of their dreams and, you know, finding that sort of happy ending. But to really understand that you can still have a positive experience of dating, and you can be growing through it and learning about yourself, even when you're not getting that outcome like right away. You know, so trying to stay focused, I think, on the process and what they can get out of it. It's kind of a different way of just saying similar to what you said, but really maybe trying to focus less on the outcome, this thing that, you know, that has to happen at the end for me to feel good about the dating, but more so for people to be thinking like, okay, what can I get about this, get from this along the way?
And a healthy balance, just creating balance. Even, you know, we keep referring back to college students. I know it's not just college students, but your main goal in coming to school is to get a degree.
Right.
And sometimes students can become so engaged in the relationship, even where their grades may suffer. So really, really just having a balance. I think balance is key.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like we've got 2 more questions before we wrap things up.
Yes, so when family does not always like the person you are dating, is this a deal breaker? Is this always a deal breaker?
I think it just depends. It depends on the seriousness of the relationship and how it is affecting you. If you are a person that's very close to your family and your family has a great influence, then it's something that you may want to think about. You know, sometimes family don't like people in the beginning, and then they end up liking them in the end. So I think you just kind of have to gauge what it is that you are able to deal with in that relationship and in the family relationship.
Yeah, and I think along those lines, I think if you remember that your friends and your family, sometimes they're just not going to like anybody, right? But if your friends or your family have some concerns about that person, I think that it's natural to maybe feel like, well, they don't understand, or they're not giving them the person the chance, but really to try to listen, what is their concern? When you're in the early stages of dating someone, often you're kind of really excited about that person. You're probably overlooking some things that someone who's looking at that person more objectively might be seeing some things that actually could be
that you
possible
can't see,
red flags. So it doesn't, I don't think it necessarily means that you have to immediately break up with that person, but I do think that you should spend some time really thinking about that and thinking about the importance of your relationships with your family and friends, and for the most part to trust that they probably are looking out for your best interest.
And really saying, what is it that you don't like about him and her, and just putting that in the back of your brain as a little note to know that they have most of the time they have your best interest at heart.
Right, and it might mean kind of explaining later on too. So let's go to our one last question.
All right, what are some tips for someone going on a blind date?
Wow.
Well, definitely we talked about safety earlier.
Safety,
and I think if it's a blind date and you're set up by somebody who really knows that person, you may not have to think as much about safety. But I do think blind date, you don't know anything about the person, find out as much as you possibly can before you go into that, but really be safe, meet in a public place, have an exit strategy, don't plan immediately. Maybe it's a quick at first meeting, so you have that opportunity to kind of end it. But I think it goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about, really taking the time to get to know somebody and trying to learn as much as you can about
the person. Yeah, and maybe that blind date being coffee versus dinner and a movie. Yeah. Maybe just coffee just to kind of get to know the person. And the students at Bennett, just because we're such a small girls' school, they look out for each other. So if a girl is going out with a new guy, they'll, kind of see what kind of car he's driving and get the license tag. Like they kind of put your friends on alert. Hey, I'm going on this blind date. Just because of safety. It's just so much going on in our world today. So I totally agree.
I think it's also, especially in a blind date, but really any sort of early dating phase, it's natural to kind of, for somebody to really want to be liked in that, so be focusing on how can I be liked by this person. But remember this also, do you like that other person? And to be asking yourself that just as much as you're maybe kind of trying to put on a positive, likable face in that first meeting. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. And even if a person kind of connects you with that person and you were, beyond the blind date and you may not really be that attracted to the person, I think don't mislead people, because I've seen that happen before where people they want to like someone, but, they feel kind of like, oh, well, he's a nice guy, but I'm not dating anyone, and, they may think that, but I think being really truthful to yourself and not trying to make something fit that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen before.
So we have covered a lot of ground today, for sure. What's your one big takeaway point that you hope that people who have been with us will learn from today?
I think the biggest thing is just take inventory of yourself to really know what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want, and don't compromise those things. Yeah. Because I think sometimes people compromise just to be in a relationship, to say I'm in a relationship.
Yeah. So it sounds like really knowing yourself, and then also what we've been talking, just take your time and take things slowly and getting to know the other person. And it seems like if you do those two things, those are really helpful for setting yourself up for building that healthy relationship.
Yes, it is.
So, well, I definitely want to thank you, Robin,
Thank you for having me. I
This
appreciate
was a really
it.
interesting discussion, and I hope that everybody who's been with us would agree too. So before everybody signs off, we would definitely appreciate if you would fill out the feedback form and just share your thoughts on today's program. And our next Relationship Booster program will be Friday, March 1st, and the topic is teamwork and parenting. So we hope that you enjoyed and got a lot from this program, and that you'll apply it for helping to build happier, healthier, and safer relationships in your own life. Thank you.
Thank you.